Today we have a truly special topic, the continuation of Gog and Magog. A change of title, yes, the Red Heifer Prophecy. We already saw where Gog and Magog was taking us, to the third temple in Jerusalem. But for that, it is also necessary for something to happen, and that is the fulfillment, what many Jews have been yearning for so many years, for a red heifer to appear, used for sacrifice and for purification. Now we are going to see what this is all about. If you have never seen what I presented many years ago on this topic, we don't know if there will be a continuation on this topic. Probably yes, because there is a lot of information to show, and not especially inventions coming from anyone, but from the Temple Institute. We will see what we will do, but meanwhile, don't miss this, because what you can see on my side already happened and is repeating itself again. To look with detail if a red cow is completely pure and suitable for the sacrifice to be able to build the third temple of Jerusalem. Let's begin. On this title page, you can appreciate a person and a cow. The person is Maimonides, a very special Jew, yes, an eminence, that wrote something, a prophecy, about the red heifer, which is what you see on the right. What is this prophecy? What is it all about? Well, to situate you a bit in the background, you already know, those that have followed the conferences, or you have seen even the first ones, the old preachings that are in our webpage. There I was talking about the red heifer. I showed how they were working, the Jews, to be able to get a red heifer just like this one. And I don't know what many people understood, that, well, directly they told me that I was a false prophet, and that I must be crazy, and that I was, I don't know, nothing good, definitely. That was in my own church in Girona. The truth is that I do not know what they really managed to understand, because I did not say that that was going to be the same day or the next day or anything like that, but that there was something that they were searching for, which was to obtain a red heifer so as to obtain something superior, which is the third temple of Jerusalem. Having that red heifer and doing something with it previously so that the temple can be built. Well, since I do not know what was understood there, I only know they were accusing me of what I already said, but curiously, day after day that passes by is proving that they are still searching for the same thing, and that each time they are closer to getting it. Well, look at this topic very carefully, because what I said so many years ago, that for anyone who investigates a bit can realize that it is no novelty, for others it is. Well, now take a look at what has appeared now. A news from the 16th of September of 2022. Israel 365 exclusive. Red heifers arrive in Israel. This is the ritual law that Hashem has commanded. Instruct Bnei Yisrael to bring you a red cow without blemish, in which there is no defect and on which no yoke has been laid. Numbers 19 verse 2. There is an image that I cannot show because Israel 365 on this news puts a clause to not show any images and also to not write any more than 100 words of this article. And after that, the people could be referred to the original website of them to continue seeing the rest of the article. Therefore, evidently, we are going to respect this rule. The Temple Institute and Bonech Israel made a huge step towards reinstating the temple service on Thursday, when 5 red heifers landed at Ben Gurion International Airport. Just yesterday we were finishing presenting the last conference on Gog and Magog, and I mentioned that it would have a continuation under another title, because it is the consequence of what would be with Gog and Magog. And now what I am showing you is a news of the famous Temple Institute, that are the ones that want to lift the third temple in Jerusalem. The red heifer was the main component in the biblically mandated process of ritual purification for impurity that results from proximity or contact with a dead body, because the elements needed for this ceremony have been lacking since the destruction of the Second Temple. Remember, this is the year 70 of the Christian era, the year 70 AD. All Jews today are considered ritually impure, thereby preventing the return of the temple service. How interesting, hey? Since they do not have the red heifer that, as you know, that has to be burnt, and its ashes has to be spread on a certain territory, and so that the people, the congregation, the followers, are purified also. Well, since they have not had it since, well, as you can see, the year 70, and I'm not talking about 1970, but the year 70 AD, when the temple was destroyed. Imagine how much time they say that they have been impure, nor have the service in the temple return. And what do you think they need then to be able to build the third temple in Jerusalem? The Temple Institute, as I said, we could not present more than 100 words, so we're going to continue to see what the Temple Institute says. Since all we could do is present this small part, you have the website here, so that if you're interested to see on the rest of the article by yourself, you can go to this web page. Okay? So, having said this, to some it will be a surprise. How is it that not long ago we even presented it in the news related to the biblical prophecy when we talk about the third temple in Jerusalem? A while ago they were saying that they could not import heifers from other countries because of a normative that was in Israel, etc., etc. Well, I don't know what has exactly changed on the matter, but now this is being done. And on top of all, there is an important detail which is what has affected this situation, and that is in foreign countries outside of Israel, when the heifers are born, you know what they do? They are marked, piercing one of their ears. Well, this would be, of course, that the cow would be impure, because it would have a problem, of course. It would not be perfect anymore. Having said this, take a look at what they say here. Red heifers arrive in Israel. On Thursday, September the 15th of 2022, 5 p.m., 5 perfect, unblemished red heifers arrived in Israel from the USA. A modest ceremony was held at the unloading bay of the cargo terminal at Ben Gurion Airport, where the new arrivals were greeted and speeches were made by the incredible people who have put their hearts and souls and means into making this historic prophetic day become a reality. They have it quite clear, don't they? We invite you to join us in our worldwide efforts to produce the longed-for ashes of the red heifer. Well, they are progressing. Yes, because you know, as we presented lately, the red heifers that they had, that were red, they had a problem. Before being 2 years old and a bit, they already had some white hairs, which made them not suitable for that sacrifice. And now, what do you know? They managed to take from the United States 5 red heifers to Israel, and they say it is a historic day, but also evidently a prophetic day also for them. Let's see the video. It is very extensive. We are only going to show a part of it, a few minutes where these 5 perfect, impeccable red heifers appear, arriving in Israel from the United States. Remember, to see these videos, go down to the description of this conference and you will see the link to be able to access to these videos on another page. Well, you have seen what an expectation it is for them. They were longing for this moment, and finally these 5 red heifers arrive. They even take photos beside them. The experts in the red heifers, the experts on all the Temple Mount matter to build the third temple of Jerusalem. Even afterwards, they have speeches just right there. Yes, a moment that for them they consider historic and prophetic. And look, even some more on this. And this is from the same page also of the Temple Institute. Red Heifer's exciting news. The Temple Institute has exciting news to share with you about a great advance in our efforts to raise a red heifer whose ashes can be used for purification. A great step towards the construction of the Holy Temple and the renovation of the Divine Service. Join us for a live transmission at 5 p.m. Israel time, in USA 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time and 7 a.m. Pacific Time. Join us in our worldwide effort to produce the longed-for ashes of the red heifer. And they put evidently their website. Yes, how interesting. Can you realize the emotion that this awakes in them because of all that it implies? It is a great step towards the construction of the Holy Temple and the renovation of the Divine Service. That means to rebuild, to lift the third temple of Jerusalem and to do once again the ritual that they did when? You can imagine, so many years ago and for so many, many years. And that includes high priests, the priests, Levites, sacrifices. Yes. Well, so you can see how excited they are. Let's take a look now at another video about those 5 perfect, flawless red heifers arriving to Israel from the USA. Well, here they are free from where they were locked up. Well, the poor cows that are all shy because they don't know where they are now. Normal, right? Anyway, if they knew the expectation that these poor animals generate, and to do what? Poor animals. But now, attention to this. We are going to show a video which is titled as Chilling Words of a Pastor about the Arrival of Red Cows to Israel. Yes, yes. Keep attentive to what he is about to say, because as a Christian, the logic thing to think is that, well, Christ died on the cross, resurrects. At that moment, the veil of the temple is torn in two, a thing that means that the service makes no sense to be done anymore. And it turns out that there are Protestants, and a heap of them, that they value this differently. Listen carefully to what he is about to say. If you have noticed, he interprets the prophecies of John in Revelation, saying that, of course, he was exiled in the Patmos island. It was the year 95-96 after Christ in the Christian era, and of course the second temple was not there because it was destroyed in the year 70. In the subtitle it said 78, but anyway, it is the year 70. And that, of course, what was he referring to when he was writing about a temple? Well, he applies it where? To the new Jerusalem that will descend from heaven and so on. No. He is applying it as if the third temple has to be rebuilt in Jerusalem as a consequence to what John said. Meaning a completely crazy interpretation, because the new Jerusalem descends after the millennium, not at the moment of the second coming of Christ, meaning as of 3031, because Jesus returns in 2031. So we are already on a bad start here with them. But of course, if they are Protestant pastors that are already talking about these things, can you imagine what this means? Because he is praising a prophecy that he thinks is going to be fulfilled, and that it will vindicate completely the biblical prophecy curiously misinterpreted, and that it will make many people that have abandoned faith or that have stopped going to church, seeing this, what will they do? Yikes, the prophecy has been fulfilled. Let's go back there because the second coming of Jesus is imminent. And he also has talked about the prophecy of the 70 weeks, that at the middle of the week, you can see how they apply it. Nothing to do with the historical, authentic matter, but that also makes you think. And what will happen at the middle of the week? Well, the Antichrist will appear, and he will say that it is not necessary to do any more sacrifices, etc., etc. Attention to what can come with all of this, because Satan's plagiarisms are terrific, to make even the Christians fall. Well, so imagine how many are going to fall to this. Jews, Christians, both Catholic and Protestant, and how many more? How many more? Of course, because it will be house of worship for all the nations if this occurs. Yes, well, the whole world is going to be deceived. And afterwards, yes, Armageddon. But before that, persecution to death on God's people, those who keep faithful to the Sabbath and to the authentic truth. Anyway, once more, you can see how the situation is preparing on all sides. And this is what was left. And to those who have inspected the heifers, they are pure. But, of course, they need to have a certain age for the sacrifice. We will see all of this. Now, in the same media as before, Christians weigh in on the relevance of the red heifer. This was from the 19th of September. This is the ritual law that Hashem has commanded. It's the same biblical text we read before from Numbers chapter 19, verse 2. Instruct Bnei Yisrael to bring you a red cow without blemish, in which there is no defect and on which no yoke has been laid. The photo cannot be shown, where, well, one of the red heifers appears, and see what they tell us here. Pay attention. On Thursday, a major step was made towards reinstating the temple service when 5 perfectly red heifers landed at Ben Gurion International Airport in Tel Aviv. How interesting that from that same airport, remember what is preparing for a train to go directly to the Wailing Wall. And also, as we saw in the last conference, the 21 of Gog and Magog, not only will it take the passengers that will go there, but also the animals that will be taken for sacrifice. Well, so this airport is going to be quite important, eh? The heifers were certified and are under the supervision of the Temple Institute, but were provided by Bonech Israel, an organization that connects Christian lovers of Israel to the Holy Land. So, realize the mentality they have. They believe all of this must happen because they think that the Jews are still God's people, and that all of this is going to happen, and they are all going to be united. It's just impressive how well the Zionism has worked to take confusion to the Protestant mindset. It is impressive. The ashes of the red heifer are unquestionably a critical part of the temple service in Jerusalem, and so Jews hoping to rebuild the temple are exhilarated over the arrival of these animals in Israel. I think there is someone else that is enthusiastic with this, and it is those that are with Zionism, and that is the Vatican, hey? Yes, what things? Because of all that involves them as well. The implications for Judaism are huge, signaling a return to observing commandments that have been impossible to keep since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. Well, it is referring to the commandments, to all those rituals that were made in the temple, not to the 10 commandments. But this development may be theologically challenging for many Christians who believe that Jesus made animal sacrifices obsolete. Israel 365 News turned to 3 Christian thought leaders to weigh in on how they view the return of the biblical red heifers. Attention to this. As the founder of Bonech Israel, Byron Stinson was instrumental in procuring the red heifers. Stinson felt that he needed to help Israel on its prophetic mission to find a red heifer and reinstate the temple service in Jerusalem. As an American, I know that our nation is a Judeo-Christian nation, Stinson said. Everything we do is about the Bible and doing the right thing. My whole life, I've been drawn by my spirit to read the Bible and love the Bible. Anyone who does that has to know, without any doubt, that God chose Israel to prove to the nations that He is God. He says in the beginning that He is going to do something, like return His people to the land, and in the last days, that is what He did, returned His people to the land. I needed to be connected to Israel because of this, Byron stated emphatically. I was raised as a Christian, so I will speak as a Christian, Byron continued. We are not just Christian as a nation, it is a Judeo-Christian. I believe that there is a bloodline for many Christians that call us by the Spirit to be part of this land. I believe I am one, and these people who are called to this, their hearts make them come. How interesting what he says. Judeo-Christian, yes, United States. So therefore, who are they going to give their support? How many times have we shown it? They have unconditional support to Israel. And only on a military level? On a politic level? No, on a religious level. And all of this, you can see, they consider that it is prophecy being fulfilled. Therefore, he, what do you know, talks about a bloodline, and he feels called to do all this. Let's see now another opinion. John Enerson, the Christian Relations Director for Cry for Zion, believes that reinstating the red heifer and temple service would be a positive step for Christianity. This is a historic event of biblical proportions. Enerson told Israel 365 News, I continually try to prepare Christians for the fact that, just like Israel was restored, the Temple Mount will ultimately be restored, and neither restoration is some nefarious work of the devil, God forbid. Do you realize how deceived they are? Enerson acknowledged that some Christians view the arrival of the red heifers and the prophetic establishment of the Jewish Third Temple as a negative development. Sadly, a segment of the church will have knee-jerk reactions to news of red heifers, Enerson said. That's because the lack of a temple is the last desperate stand of replacement theology. Do you know what the replacement theology is? That God's people stops being exclusively the Jews, the message is passed on to the Gentiles, the authentic church, the authentic God's people is constituted and do accept the Messiah and continue to keep what was supposed to be kept forever. And for them, this is the replacement theology, therefore being a wrong theology. But of course, now with the temple, they will have to see things drastically different. Look at what he says. The destruction of the temple was viewed by the later church as conclusive proof that the old covenant was dead and superseded by something radically redefined. Take a look, right? Something that is true and taken as, it's not true. In fact, according to the New Testament, there is no conflict between the temple sacrifices and the gospel. None at all. Instead, they illustrate it. For Christians, sacrifices before Jesus pointed forward to Golgotha. Afterward, they point back to it. It's that simple. Hebrews 10:4 clarifies that it was always impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins in order to save someone's eternal soul. They serve other important functions. Look at what he's saying. So, he considers good to continue doing sacrifices because, look, the ones before Jesus were pointing to Christ, which is completely true. But, after Christ, to what are they going to point? They point back to Him, to the second coming. But this is scandalous. If all of this is finished with Christ, it is finished and that's it. The New Testament specifically mentions the ashes of the red heifer. It endorses their legitimacy in the present tense and states that the ashes certainly continued to remove ritual impurity of the physical body, Hebrews 9:13. It argues that this very truth should encourage our faith in Jesus. Well, what a manner of interpreting the texts, to take the Protestant world to Zionism. But you can see that he mentions that there is already a segment of Christians that do not agree on this to be done because it is stamping on Christ, on the sacrifice that Christ did for us. Well, I hope that all that group that he is quoting, having those negative knee-jerk reactions, may stay faithful to the end and accept the message of the fourth angel, because it is going to be practically impossible to resist to that great deception that is preparing with all of this. Because remember that afterwards, Satan appears as if he were Christ. Do not forget this. Emerson notes that the temple plays an essential role in early Christianity. Jesus himself loved God's temple, the Father's house, Emerson said. He wept at the very thought of its desolation. Paul had no problems bringing sin offerings in the temple in Acts 21. He testified repeatedly on trial that he came to bring sacrifices, was purified by the ashes of the red heifer, and committed no offense against the temple. He quotes Acts 24, verses 17 to 18, and 25, verse 8. The evidence is clear. What is evident is how he twists the texts to imply what is not correct. It's brutal, hey? But there he goes. Jesus wept at the thought of the temple's desolation? Or was he thinking in what was awaiting to those that were despising him? He was very clear about the temple, that it was going to be destroyed. He himself prophesied it. And evidently the temple, who did it pass on to be? Evidently to who it symbolized, which was Christ himself. And what happened to his body? He himself said it. 3 days and resurrection. And why did they want to kill him and infuse that concept in the trial? He said that he was going to destroy the temple in 3 days and then he will rebuild it. You remember, right? And on top of that, he adds all of this about Paul, quoting things out of the logic of the text. Once more, careful when the Bible is read and misinterpreted, because he is saying things about Paul that are not correct. As news of a potential red heifer break, we Christians should remember that Jesus and his apostles never slandered the Holy Temple by calling it the Temple of Antichrist or of the devil, God forbid. They called it the Temple of God. The 2nd of Thessalonians 2, verses 3 to 4. Look, once more, what a way of twisting things. To justify the third temple, he is saying that they never slandered the Holy Temple, calling it the Temple of Antichrist or of the devil. But how many times have we shown how they referred to that temple precisely there in the chapter 2 of 2nd of Thessalonians? Once more, or we study the Bible properly, or we are going to be conned. In Spanish, they say, you will be given cats for hair. The temple of the Antichrist is a completely unbiblical term. Both literally, it does not appear in the Bible, and figuratively, Emerson stated unequivocally. It is not the temple of Antichrist, it is God's house. So look how they understand that when he is going to settle on the temple, well, it is going to be true for them. Jesus will appear, and in the end, he will reign from Jerusalem. Yes, not the new Jerusalem after the millennium, no. Now, in very few years. Notice, once again, how misinterpreting can take you to a chain, a sequence of doctrinal errors that take you directly to perdition, putting you at Satan's feet. The Church needs to re-examine the Scriptures, not just regarding Israel, but in regard to the temple service as well, Emerson concluded. Well, it is a noteworthy encouragement that a committed Christian has provided these red heifers to Israel. Well, yes, an American Christian. Pastor Trey Graham, the senior pastor of First Melissa in Texas, prefaced his comments about the Red Heifer by saying, "I am a Bible teacher and not a lobbyist." Followers of Jesus, who love God's Word, are called to study and understand both testaments of their Bible, Pastor Graham said. When they read the New Testament, they will find these words of Jesus. "Do not think that I came to abolish the law of the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill." Matthew 5:17. Do you realize how once more they are twisting Jesus' words to say definitely that there must continue to be sacrifices and the temple, when Jesus does not refer to this? It is impressive. What a way of twisting the scriptures. Pastor Graham noted that the red heifer plays an important role in the Hebrew Bible. Followers of Jesus, known as Yeshua in Hebrew, should also read Numbers 19 verse 2 in the Old Testament, known as the Tanakh for the Jews, which says, "This is the statute," Hebrew chok, "of the law which the Lord has commanded, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, that they bring you an unblemished red heifer, in which is no defect, and on which a yoke has never been placed." Pastor Graham noted that according to Christian theology, belief in Yeshua precluded the need for animal sacrifices. And it is like that. There is no more. Christian beliefs assert that the death of Jesus on the cross and his resurrection provide the ultimate sacrifice for sin and forgiveness for all mankind, Pastor Graham explained. Christian doctrine also teaches that animal sacrifices in the Bible allude to the saving work of Jesus, the Jewish man called the Lamb of God by John the Baptizer, John 1:29. Nonetheless, Pastor Graham emphasized that the restoration of the temple in Jerusalem was a necessary step in the final redemption. Bible students, both Christian and Jewish, who anxiously anticipate the third temple, may soon realize that the ashes of a red heifer, parach adumach, are one of the final missing ingredients for the prophesied restoration of temple worship in the days of Messiah, Pastor Graham said. The Mishnah, attention now to this, the oral law, teaches that only 9 of these rare animals were sacrificed during the days of the tabernacle, Mishkan, and the first and second temples. 9 cows, okay? Maimonides taught that the 10th red heifer would only be found and sacrificed when King Messiah was ready to appear. Some of you maybe were asking yourselves why the name of the title of this conference, The Prophecy of the Red Heifer. Yes, not only because of what the Old Testament talked about, but because Maimonides wrote this: 9 heifers. A 10th is needed to complete everything. It's the number 10, completion. It's numeral meaning. And what do you know? He said that it would appear or would be found and sacrificed when the King Messiah was ready to appear. So therefore, ready to appear. True. True in the second coming of Christ. That is true, but the thing is, this will lead to the one that will appear as if he were the Messiah. Satan appearing as if he were him. Do you realize how Satan prepares the great deception? And now, for all of those that said those things at that moment about what I was exposing, I wish that this, if it arrives to them, and above all, if God allows them to get to see the fulfillment of all of these things, they can realize that what I said was no nonsense, and that I was no false prophet, or anything like it. I was exposing what the biblical prophecy was saying to us, and uncovering Satan's tricks with his plagiarisms to take the whole world to the great deception. Hopefully it is clear for once, although I doubt it is left clear for them. Anyway, well, on one hand, it seemed as if this one was going to go in a good direction, but then at the end he ends up saying this. The truth is that what does all of this denote us? that the whole world is going to fall in the trap in an absolutely radical way. How few will be rid of it? And they continue saying, the faithful and arduous work done by those seeking to raise a spotless red heifer in our generation, including some of my fellow Texans, should be commended. For Jews, this step could be the realization of Maimonides' prophecy. For Christians, this development could be another confirmation that the promises of the Bible in both Old and New Testaments are true and trustworthy. Therefore, it also gives credit that this is correct. Well, Jews and Christians can jointly pray that the adventures of this unique animal will bring us one day closer to Messiah's coming. As Maimonides wrote, may he speedily be revealed. Mishneh Torah, Laws of Parah Adumah 3:5. Well, I don't know what you thought about this brief topic. Definitely, I must say that it is one of those that has nothing to waste. We will see if we give this one a continuation, because there is a lot of information given by the Temple Institute about the red heifer. You know something? They still ask themselves, the Jews in general, why a red heifer was to be sacrificed to obtain purification from its ashes. And they still ask themselves why they have to do it, because they do not know the meaning it has, to what or who it is referring to, but they do it because it is just a mandate from God. I can tell you that probably this will have a continuation with a lot of information, but we will leave it in God's hands, because it is all happening so fast that I do not have enough time to present all that I would want to, and there is a lot of material that the world needs to know, for there to be a people, for God to have well prepared, to be a light for this world that you can already see is very close to falling into the most thickest darkness in the history of mankind. Maranatha 2031. That is when Christ comes back, not before, because before there will be all of this, and Satan will appear as if he were Jesus. Do not forget this ever. God bless.